feel I can't do choral things for you. I feel that's sad after that wonderful choral piece you just did. I'm excited to be here. I've wanted to be here for a very long time, way back when, I forget where Liz is. I don't know where she is. There you are in the end. I couldn't find you with my head. I've known Liz since the 90s, I think. When you first came to Sudbury, I was thinking it was Rites of Spring with Roger Nash, and then working with the League of Canadian Poets and trying to do some fundraising work. And just always really, really impressed by the work you've done here with this festival, you know, because I think it's one of two really that are straightforward poetry festivals in Canada. This one and then the Edmonton one, right? There's Poetry Weekend in New Brunswick, but this one's one of the oldest ones and the most amazing. So I'm really pleased to be here and to be with people that I really respect their work. Barry Dempster, you don't know me, but I'm like a fangirl. Not like in a stalkerish way. I respond well to pepper spray, bear bells. I'll go away. And Penn I've known forever, so it's lovely to read with you this week. And yeah. And if anybody wants to talk to me about the Writers' Union of Canada, I love it. I'm part of it. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to speak to anyone about that. I'll read from you first from this book, which came out last fall. It's sort of, well, it is structured. It's not sort of. It's structured around the Celtic meditative wheel and the four elements plus the notion of spirit. And a bit of shape-shifting with middle-aged women because I'm just past middle age. So the figure of the Morrigan, of Selkies, all of those sort of Irish Celtic creepy ladies, but they're really not that creepy. I'm going to start with, this was just a poem based around a text. Had a person I knew on a ferry between, do you know when you couldn't go underneath the harbor when you were flying into Porter and Toronto Island, you had to go, was there a little ferry you had to cross with? Well, he was on one and I was on a ferry from Pelee Island to, I don't know where Daniel is either. Where's Daniel? At the back, hi. Now I see the rest of you back there. It's not you, it's somebody else. But so one person on a ferry in Toronto, one on the way to Kingsville. So this is called Seaworthy. These ferries across two separate Great Lakes move from islands, Toronto and Pelee, to embrace of shores so certain, glacial carved, a whole province width apart. We are both looking out portholes. The sailor sends notes across distances, letters scratched, an alphabet on the screen. Seaworthy, text messages tumble head first across the blue of a crisp September sky. Seaworthy, a battened-down hatch or a clock that never stops, a ferry that docks without a jolt, a lighthouse without a burnt-out bulb, a map that won't misguide or confuse. These lakes, so ancient but still recent, geologic histories rooted in rock, the shape of them underwater and hidden, a letter without a stamp left in a mailbox. That's never a good thing to do to somebody. Look out portholes on mornings when light laces across water in two different places in one province. Far away, but tethered by something like a stroke of lightning, a sudden sun shower, wild weather crossing a wide sky. Oh, you don't... You don't have to clap in between. No one knows what to do sometimes, eh? Like, do you clap in between? Do you not? It's totally up to you, but you don't have to. And then I'll read you the title poem, which is Emptying the Ocean. I love Michael Crummey's work. I love his work as a poet and a novelist. So there was a piece in The Innocents, which is one of his best novels, I think. And he wrote, methodically emptying the boat, a pint of ocean at a time. And I thought, oh, that's cool. So this is the notion of what the ocean is inside of you emotionally. Emptying the ocean. Begin with tears, salt water. made of brine from seaweed ribbon and rough edge of starfish, split shells of cockles and oysters, open. From dusk of whale fins, mirror of fish scales, salt and water and evening light on skin. From unexpected edge of galaxies, breath hitched, made up of stars, too. Place of origin, cusp of climax, wave that swells, current of spent atoms, swept across pin-pricked sky, a periodic table that veils itself in elemental lace or gossamered muslin. Begin with tears, salt water. Then find a dory that cradles, floats, comforts, carries me through a fierce Atlantic storm. Waterlogged, I must empty the hull carefully, one bucket and then another, a pint of ocean at a time. So I'm from Sudbury. Do you know where that is? Does everybody know where that is? Has anyone ever been? Oh, good. Yay. That's awesome. And my grandfather he sort of ran the Hudson's Bay Company in Sudbury and then opened a general store in Creighton, which was a mining town outside of Sudbury. And so when he retired, he built a house in Sudbury, and then the stack was built in Coppercliff in the 60s. But he used to wash off the plants in the morning before the stack was built, and all the mining stuff from the air would come down and ruin his plants. Sounds awful, and it was true. We had acid rain when I was growing up, so you'd wake up after and find like things on your hood of your car. This was Sudbury before environmentalism happened. This is called Taking Down the Stack, Coppercliff. Almost half a century here, and the first half of life was time spent with the tall stack, spitting out clouds of sulfur, tasted first on tip of tongue, then back of my throat. The nickel mines coughed up rain, coating peony and lilac leaves with thick powdered silver. Old stories, flowers pressed in a prayer book. How my dead relatives would hose off the flower garden every morning at dawn, the dew clinging stubbornly to stems and painting the backs of ladybugs. Even the earwigs mistook them for simple beetles. Yeah. And then this is roadkill. So I drive home on Highway 69. If you've driven that road, it's not always safe. And a couple of years ago, saw a moose hit. Lots of people have a moose hit and die because the moose comes onto your car. And this fellow didn't. He had a van. But this is called roadkill. One great moose, all majesty, broken and laid low at the edge of a northern highway. One man standing next to his crumpled van, shocked, his fingers working madly, as if playing Gould's piano, the Goldberg variations hanging in midair, so pine and blood-scented. Yeah. You know, Stuart last night said words he doesn't like in poems, and I was like, God, I can't read that poem. I can't read that poem. What was it? You said no angels. Okay, no mythic kind of people. So I pulled out Medusa. I know. I went through this morning at breakfast going, what am I going to do? I'll read you this one. This is for Lily, because this is a moon poem. It ends with the word moon, right? I can do that? Okay, so this is called The Year of the Open Heart. This, the sea says in passing, is your year of the open heart. Weighted, this notion, heavy, pregnant Florida oranges in a fine net bag, carried haphazardly from the grocery store to the sprung back door of that old house. The bag swinging back and forth, ahead and behind her feet now, in time with her footsteps, her humming all lyrical and mystical, so without direction. Weighted, this notion of a year blooming lotus, petals unfurling and then edging towards fingers that reach, eager for something that sits just beyond a pool of light, just beyond the songs of wind chimes that nestle in the cedar, the scented incense rising to greet the sky's newest sliver of moon. And then you said you don't like ekphrastic poems. But I'm going to read you, I kind of do, because I always wanted to be an artist when I was at school, and I sucked at art. Like the art teacher at my high school said, okay, make the figure of a person, and I made what I thought was a woman, but looked more like a mushroom, and I did not do well. So now I tend to write about art. And I have a thing for women artists and men who kind of overshadow them. I'm fascinated. So I've written about the Pratts, Mary and Christopher. I've written about Frida and Diego. I've written about, who else? Georgia O'Keeffe. And this one, Maud Lewis, just because I feel like the movie sort of, if you've seen that movie, it's kind of romanticized that relationship. But I've been out to Nova Scotia and talked to people who knew Everett, and he was not a nice man. I think they kind of overdo that as a romantic relationship in the film. And if you've ever seen Stephen Rood's work, it's beautiful how Maud's work has been commercialized, how she's been sold after death. And that little house in the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia is in fact a murder scene, right? If you study what happened to Everett afterwards. So there's a lot going on here. There are 3 little poems. These are poems from Maud Lewis. And she said, as long as I've got a brush in front of me, I'm all right. She died in the year I was born, so I think that's part of it too. Little bird. Maud, you were a little bird in a tiny house, and he kept you too close for your own good. Love is a gravitational force, a planet in orbit, Atlantic waves at midnight, pull of 2 magnets. You painted that house as a canvas, a garden springing up on the once white wall. Art has gravity too. Oil paint in an emptied sardine can, bristles of brush, your turpentined hands. A little bird in a tiny house, curled whirl of seashelled fashion body. Flight is a painted seagull, wings wide on glass window pane, then up high in Digby sky. Paintings for sale, that's her sign. Your fingerprints and then sometimes his impressed in depth of oil paint along the edges of a worn barn board. Your hands driftwood sculpted and spindled, one tucked under an elbow, the other holding a long brush. Your head aching from the fumes of paint and turpentine and how it throbbed at the end of the day. Your days bookended by love for Everett, and your view, a front window, the light coming through painted flowers. Opposites. Loneliness and light, in the substance of a painting, brush strokes against silence. Cage and freedom, a life mapped by a strange frame, cars stopping on the road outside. Between Maud and far beyond Everett, and how she rises above him now, rightful and triumphant, painted wings wide out over the sea. But she's still sort of commercialized. There's a lot there. I'm going to read you one that I wrote. There are 2 in here, Arrival and Departure, but I'm going to read you Departure, which I wrote after Seamus Heaney died. I have a thing for his work. He's kind of just always influenced me as a writer. I named my new puppy Seamus after him. Even tattooed the last words he said on my arm because I'm a weirdo. Nole temere, which means be not afraid. He was just amazing. So this is what I wrote after he died. Departure. The day you left, a charm of hummingbirds crossed the yard, hovered at the feeder, shifted towards the flowers, their wings cutting ribbons through the muggy air. Milk curdled, a dragonfly died after being trapped in the closed back room, and a tea bag tore on the kitchen counter. The day you left, lights flickered, my dog barked at the front window without purpose, a wind chime went wild, a black squirrel high-wired itself along the garden fence, and a begonia wilted. The day you left, the French door slammed, rattling panes, the car engine wouldn't turn over, and the maple shed its leaves before the season turned. The day you left, fireflies gathered in an open mason jar, danced a waltz and then left in murmuration. following the wake of yesterday's barn swallows. The day you left, my heart sped up, slowed before stopping, and then began beating again. Okay. I'm going to read you a few little pieces. This is all like tiny poems that I wrote during the pandemic, because I had a weird pandemic. I don't know about, I live with 2 dogs. So this is called Fault Lines and Shatter Cones. It's sort of obviously referencing Sudbury and mining. And I encountered a man who was not a nice man. Illusions, and dishonesty. So some of these refer to that. Fault lines and shatter cones map the inside of my heart. Trace one nickeled line with your index finger. Find its origin. Consider where it goes now. Forward with starlight, and not at all where it began. Just after some meteor hit. Something's wounded, broken. There's an impact point, then a rocky basin into which you pour a tincture of confusion mixed in a thing that looks like love. My mouth now, so full of sulfur, just after a dawn rain, I cannot speak because of it. I don't know if he's ever going to read these. Sometimes you write stuff as poets and you think, I should not publish this. But I sent it to Ian Letourneau, and he has a new little chapbook press, and he said, oh, yes, you should. So, too bad. So sad. It's like Taylor Swift for poems. Right? I like them because they're short. I'm going to just find you a couple more here. Look for a tricycle that won't tip over into the void, a telescope that you can see, that can help you see out far, far beyond Saturn, a swing firmly fastened to a tree in a windstorm, an avocado that is neither here nor there, just somewhere else beyond definition, between ripe and rotting, a high wire act without a net. Confused by illusions, truth pressed paper folded into origami ghosts that dance discordant across the back lawn. Letters spent in words on paper drift out like ripples that move across this skin of water between edges of lake ice and nearby northern shore. Yours is a shattered alphabet, parts of speech and silence, held in the hollow of my open palm, confetti, sequins, fallen stars. Don't hold on too tightly or they will disappear. The crabapple tree genuflects to the weight of heavy rain, and your chameleon-colored sky is impossible to read. Goldberg, Gould, and COVID chicken I can't taste. Your ghost lectures in my living room. It's Wednesday. I hear you murmur, chastising yourself over and over. Meanwhile, I write, fashion a paragraph of breadcrumbs that lead me toward a dark witch, a wish, a misplaced minotaur. Mark this down now. Mind what the fuck is happening. Be witness to it. Don't forget. Epistolary love is when someone writes, eagles don't fly with pigeons, love. Why would they want to? Remember that. Leave the fucking pigeons alone. I need to remember that. Rise. Misery Bay, they called it, but beauty roots itself there, solitude in good company, you and me walking, and then 3 trees, spindly, solitary, sentinels looking out over this shoreline. Oracles, maybe. We were woven, then not. Thank you.